Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Okay.
Ask the camera to leave the room. They'll just stay in the room.
Yeah. Okay, I would invite the cameras to leave the room, please. Oh, I know. I'll have to throw my gavel at them. Okay, then. I want to again welcome everyone here. This, members, visitors, is a continuation of Chapter 9, Pension and Insurance Administration, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, of the November 2006 report of the Auditor General of Canada. And we're very pleased to have with us today Staff Sergeant Mike Frizzell. Staff Sergeant Frizzell has been here before, of course. Chief Superintendent Fraser McCauley. Chief Superintendent McCauley has been before the committee on this particular investigation on several occasions. We have Acting Deputy Commissioner Kevin Mole, Human Resources, and also Officer in Charge Tony Pickett, and Officer in Charge Insurance Renewal and Moderation Project. So I want to extend on behalf of the committee a very warm welcome to each and every one of you. Before we swear the witnesses in and proceed, I want to deal, colleagues, with the minutes of the steering committee, which was held earlier today. Those minutes have been circulated, and I would invite a motion to have them approved, and then we can open it for discussion. Somebody prepared to move? Mr. Christopherson moved their adoption. Any discussion? All in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried. Okay, then. I am now again going to go back to the formal part of the meeting, and I understand we have a presentation. Well, first of all, I'm going to swear the witnesses in, and then we have a presentation from Chief Superintendent McCauley and Staff Sergeant Frizzell. I'll turn the meeting over to you people to present the presentation.
I, Mike Frizzell, do swear that the evidence I'm about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
I, Fraser McCauley, do swear that the evidence I shall give on this examination shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
I, Kevin Michael Mole, do solemnly, sincerely, and truly affirm and declare. I, Kevin Michael Mole, do swear that the evidence I give on this examination shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
I, Tony Pickett, also known as Anthony Pickett, do swear that the evidence I shall give on this examination shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Okay, then, Chief Superintendent McCauley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. We have brought with us today 15 binders with appendices. Unfortunately, they're only in one official language because they're appendices at this point in time. The presentation has been done up in both official languages. So we have left them with the clerk, and we were waiting the indulgence of the Chair to determine whether or not we could make reference to them here today. We have 15 copies, 15 binders.
Well, Chief Superintendent, the only way that can happen is if we have the unanimous consent of all committee members, and just to put on the record what exactly you want to do. Where are these? I don't see them. So this is a binder. There's only like one binder for each member.
Correct.
And these contain what?
These are appendices that attach or give evidence around each of the slides that we're being spoken to. So there are copies of letters, there's copies of email transactions, there are issues that support the issues that we're going to talk about here today.
And your presentation, of course, is in both official languages.
Correct.
And, I think as everyone knows, the only way this can happen, it's certainly against the policy of this committee, and it's against the policy of every committee of the House, for that matter. But if you get unanimous consent, we'll receive it. Mr. Williams, you want to speak to that deal?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I think that not only are we veering off in some uncharted waters as far as this particular investigation has been in the last number of weeks, but this is also, we have the constitutional requirement that we operate in both official languages. And the RCMP, as a national force, operates in both official languages. And when I was in your position, Mr. Chair, for a number of years, was adamant that we upheld that rule, that it was not a matter of convenience for the majority who may speak one particular language or the other, that we are an institution of official languages at all times, not just a matter of convenience. And therefore, when I moved that these gentlemen come forward and make the presentation, we also are, because we are a public body, Mr. Chairman, televised, that we deal largely with verbal presentations, and that may sometimes refer to documentation elsewhere, but the bulk of the material that we receive is oral, and I was hoping that they would make an oral presentation to us with some slides and so on and so forth, and we could walk away from here, and Canadians could walk away from here saying, I understand what this is all about. Now, if you're going to refer to 15 binders, and I hope that what Mr. Lake has isn't one of them, that we will never, ever be able to explain to Canadians what this is all about. Therefore, I think that we ask these gentlemen to make the presentation, and that we abide by the rules of this House, 2 official languages, and we can read these binders over the summer.
So I take it, Mr. Williams, and I agree with you, by the way, that you're not consenting to the binder. And again, that is the RCMP does. I know sometimes we do have witnesses coming in that don't have the resources or the capacity or the wherewithal to translate large volumes of documents, and we make the House services available to do that. And sometimes we don't get them, but normally we do expect to have things before the meeting in both official languages, so that people hear speak French or English. They have the choice of the language that they want to use. Mr. Christopherson.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate what Mr. Williams is saying. I'd be interested to hear what other members might have to say as to whether or not an exception is warranted at this time. But all I wanted to put on the record was, in fairness to the RCMP officers that are presenting, I agree at the get-go, all of it should have been in both languages. It should have been run through the committee leadership well ahead of time. That didn't happen. But I do want to say that there have been, there's at least one occasion I can recall, and maybe 2, where we have given that exception and said, because there's so much and because it's emails and all members of the committee were supportive, it's not totally unusual that the RCMP might have expected that background reference attachment material might have been allowed. So I just want to put that on the record to be fair. We have gone this route with the RCMP background material before.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with what Mr. Williams has said. Documents tabled with the committee should be presented in both languages. However, and I do find it unfortunate that the papers were not translated before. I think the issue now is, and it refers to the continuity of the work of the Public Accounts Committee, The committee hears witnesses in public, conducts its business in public. This is the most important thing right now. However, that being said, do documents have to be translated before they're tabled, or part of the documents, so that eventually they can be tabled later on? I'm just putting the issue out there. Perhaps for the people who are tabling these documents, it might be a good idea to get the most important documents only translated.
The policy of the committee is that the documents are not tabled until they're translated in both official languages. We did make an exception earlier in this particular investigation. There was a very large, and I forget which one it was right now, a very large document that from our information, it would take months to get translated, and there was consent given to table it with the understanding that certain designated segments would be translated, and that was the KPMG report, and that, I believe, has been done. So I take it unanimous consent is now forthcoming. Back to you, Chief Superintendent McCauley.
Thank you, sir. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Mike Frizzell, and he will walk through the slides that I believe you do have in both official languages.
So just for the record, most of what's in the binder is excerpts from a criminal investigation. We only got permission yesterday to even make copies of it for you, so translation was an impossibility. It certainly wasn't because we wanted to show disrespect.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I have on a point? May I? Early on, just and it's because you've raised this, Staff Sergeant. I just want to be clear. We had asked, we'd mandated you and Chief Superintendent McCauley to go and do this. It had the blessing of the Commissioner. We had absolute assurances from the Commissioner that there would be total cooperation just to clear the decks and make sure that everything is cool. Is that the way it unfolded, Mr. Staff Sergeant Frizzell?
I was given access to the information to present my presentation, no problem at all. But to get you people copies of it, it took a little longer.
But no other major impediment. They were good, and the record should note that the Commissioner was as good as their word, and it's appreciated. Sorry, go ahead.
So this will be a little more challenging, but I think we can do it. What I'm going to talk about today is the insurance investigation that took place. As has been previously stated, the police investigation into the pension funds was broken into different streams. I was responsible for the contracting and the insurance streams. I'm only going to talk about the insurance today because that's all we have time for. But a lot of what happened, or what we found in the insurance investigation, is typical of the entire investigation, so it'll give you a flavor for the types of things we're finding. How it started. Back in 1953, the Great West Life Insurance Company became the underwriter for some life insurance plans for RCMP members. Standard stuff, insurance came off the insurance premiums came off the members' paychecks, were sent to Great West Life. All the administration of that was conducted by the RCMP. This is what's known as an employer-sponsored group life plan. Fairly simple. What you need to know with the RCMP, and what's often confused, is it's the Treasury Board is our employer. Me as a member of the RCMP, the Treasury Board is my employer, not the RCMP. That's under Section 11 of the Financial Administration Act. As such, it's the Treasury Board that sets all conditions of pay and benefits. So from 1953 to 1995, the plans were held by the RCMP, with the Commissioner as the policyholder, and the RCMP at the National Compensation Policy Center, also known as NCPC, and its various forms before that, and the compensation specialists who are out in the field. They're the ones that deal with the members face on. So that's how the administration of the insurance took place. Great West Life merely, they're the underwriters. So they took in the premiums, they invested them, and they paid off the claims. and they were paid a flat rate for that, along with a profit margin. An insurance committee was formed quite a ways back. The idea of the insurance committee, it was made up of members of the sponsor, being the RCMP, so senior management of the RCMP, and the plan participants, the regular members of the RCMP. Their role was just to act as representatives of the members to decide how the money should be invested, T-bills, whatever, to get a good return without worrying too much about the money disappearing. These are self-insured plans, meaning that they're not held by Great-West Life. The members of the plans are responsible if there's too many claims, and the members are also responsible for any surplus. In 1995, a fair surplus had built up in these plans due to the members paying more than there were claims. 1995 was also a year, I think it's called program renewal, where things were kind of tight in the government. Programs were being cut, departments were being downsized. So the director of the NCPC decided that with the money sitting in these funds, that perhaps they should pay for their own administration. And what in effect happened was the RCMP decided that, or this representative of the RCMP decided that they would now go into the premium funds, which belonged to the members, to fund what up until then had been an employer responsibility. That started in 1995. In 1997, a number of other costs came into effect with changes to the plans, so they decided they would bill those costs to the plans as well. So what started as a fairly small amount started to grow. In 1998, a couple of interesting things happened. One, the disability insurance, which is paid for 85% by Treasury Board, started getting billed for administration. And also the employees that had been working for the RCMP were changed over to Great-West Life employees. Now this is significant in that these employees were, for all intents and purposes, part of the National Compensation Policy Center of the RCMP, but they were paid for out of the plans, and they were called Great-West Life employees. They didn't work at Great-West Life. The ones we talked to had never even been to a Great-West Life office. But what this did was it allowed us to keep on employees, and there would be no audit trail. Up until then, Great-West Life had been cutting a check to the RCMP to pay for the administration costs. So they would take the money out of the members' plans, cut a check for it, it would go back to the Receiver General, and then be routed back to NCPC, which of course makes a fairly clear audit trail. Once the employees were Great-West Life employees, they were no longer on the RCMP books. So that gives you a little background of how the monies went from the members, belonging to the members, to being used by the RCMP. In 2000, that's when Mr. Krupe came to the NCPC, the National Compensation Policy Center. When he arrived, there had been talk at the RCMP about the computer system that was used to store insurance data was deemed to be unreliable. There was no guarantee that it would hold the data, have good data integrity, which created a risk to the RCMP. You know, if a member was underinsured, or if they said they were insured and he wasn't, that sort of thing. So it was decided that you could no longer rely on that system, so they would outsource, go to another company that would have good systems in place. What should have happened was to do an outsourcing, it should have gotten Treasury Board's approval. Instead, they went back to the insurance committee and said, hey, we've got a great deal for you. It's good for the members. You guys will be very happy with the service. And the way things are going these days, the plans have to pay their own way. This was right around the time where the pension where it was legislated that the pension had to start paying its own administration. So the members of the insurance committee thought, well, it's the same thing. So they didn't really feel that they had, it wasn't their place to say no. They were told it was going to be great for the members. There's minutes here in the binder that contain the sales pitch Mr. Krupe made, but the bottom line was it's good for the members. The plans can handle it. Plans should pay. It's just the way things are going. Around the same time, they went to Great West Life and said, would you be the administrator? Because the RCMP had been doing the administration up till that point, the RCMP were outsourcing a service that they were responsible for. That's the kind of thing that goes to tender. Other companies should get a chance to bid for this, but it was much easier to go to Great West Life. Nobody would question that because Great West Life was the underwriter. Any outside observer would assume that Great West Life had been paying for the administration because there had been Great West Life employees on site. So Great West Life said, sure, we'll look at it. We have a couple of clients that we do administration for, so we will look into it. And what they found almost immediately was there was no processes documented at NCPC, certainly not to their satisfaction. They learned that the payroll comes from PWGSC, not the RCMP, just a whole bunch of things. They ended up spending $250,000 of the plan's funding, of the monies in the premium accounts, before they realized that they couldn't do it. So they told NCPC, we can't do it. NCPC was not very happy. What's happened up till now in the committee is a lot of he said, she said stuff. So what I thought was I would do today is actually read from some of the emails that went back and forth so you could actually hear from the people that were doing these deals.
Point of order, Mr. Williams.
It's perfectly okay for Mr. Staff Sergeant Frizzell to read these emails. Just they can't table them in two official languages. That's, as long as he understands that. If he feels that some content of the email are important, he can read them and they will be translated.
Oh, yeah, he knows that.
Okay. So they have the meeting, and Great West Life is told by NCPC, keep it quiet, that you're not going to do the administration. You guys should go see Morno Sebeco. You just got them as a pension outsourcer. They're going to do the pension administration. I'm sure they can do your insurance administration at the same time. An email from Great West Life to NCPC stating, following the meeting in Ottawa that our members attended, it was our understanding that your investigation into an alternate service provider was to be treated as confidential and not to be shared with our resources. They decided to cancel the next meeting because of because they didn't have an outsourcer. They had to look for one. So a meeting or email is sent out to let everybody know the meeting is canceled, but they're not told why. The email reads that some of the members of the project team can't be there, so we're going to cancel the January 7th meeting, and due to the scheduling conflicts of some team members. This is from one of the people that knows Great West Life isn't doing the outsourcing anymore, or doing the administration. One of his co-conspirators, for lack of a better term, writes back to him giving some feedback on the email, just a one-word, smooth. Within a few days...
Point of order.
Mr. Wisniewski, point of order.
Would it be possible to know who the individual was? As an individual is being quoted.
Yes, you probably should identify who the email was from and who it was being sent to when you refer to that.
Yeah, that was... I'm in a little bad spot there. That was the idea of having the books in front of you. Because it was a police investigation and because this is a public forum, it's something I could give the names in camera, but these are people that were subject to a criminal investigation.
But you got consent, I'm not following this. You got consent from your superiors to come forward with the information. It's not that they obviously vetted it and didn't see a problem. So once it's translated, it's going to be tabled the minute after it's translated. Do you follow the problem I'm having here?
But when it's tabled, it's just to the committee members.
Not really, no. It's tabled to the...
I was given a letter explaining the ATIP process to me. And I think this would fall under that. I would defer to my senior officers here to give me some guidance there.
Well, I can tell you, once these documents are tabled, Staff Sergeant Frizzle, they're public documents. A document tabled in this committee is a public document. Mr. Williams.
Perhaps we can have our legal counsel tell us that we don't operate under ATIPs, we operate under parliamentary rules.
Do you have anything to add, Mr. Tardy?
Mr. Chairman, I think Mr. Williams is quite right in the sense that the Access to Information Act and the Privacy Act were meant to cover relations between branches, institutions of the executive branch and private individuals. They were not meant to cover relations between institutions of the executive branch of government and the legislative branch. So, in other words, in this forum, access to information and privacy have very limited, if any, application. When the committee requests information, it is entitled to be given it. Now, obviously, in the interests of fairness and equity, some accommodation can be made, but I'm having a little bit of difficulty when a witness comes, starts reading from a document, and then says, yes, but this part of the document has to be protected, and others don't. So.
And when the documents, the intent is to table the documents, they would become public. Would they not become public?
Absolutely. In that sense, public means public to the world at large.
Mr. Christopherson.
Thank you, Chair. I suspect that we're very quickly heading to the point where we can force the issue if we want. That seems to be. But in fairness, I would at least like to hear from the most senior officer here what the implications are for something being divulged. Let's not just run roughshod here. Let's understand, what. So, through you, Chair, what are the implications of this material being released publicly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, certainly the implications for the RCMP in holding that information is to respect the Privacy Act. So, and all of the requirements of the access to information. So, in releasing the information to the committee, we would be releasing our responsibility under the Privacy Act and the access to information.
Okay, that part, that's good. We can deal with that because we have the authority to, if you will, override that. But I was just concerned that I was left with the impression there was a criminal investigation. I'm looking for implications beyond just the political In other words, are we about to do something that's going to screw up an important case, divulge something that really does some harm to something that most Canadians would want kept confidential if it meant the effectiveness of what you do? So I just want to give you a chance to tell us, wait a minute, folks, before you do this, think about, and I'm giving you a chance to tell us what to think about. Otherwise, I suspect we're going to go right ahead and direct that this be tabled.
Well, again, this is a criminal investigation, so the information that's contained within the report is subject to a criminal inquiry. So if for whatever reason the intent was to reopen the investigation at some point, then the information would be there is the opportunity that it could be jeopardized.
Before I relinquish the floor, Chair, I mean, nothing said at this committee can ever be used in any other proceedings. So I'm not hearing yet anything, officer, that's telling me that I'm sorry. You're acting commissioner. Acting Commissioner, is that your title, sir?
Assistant Commissioner Moe.
Assistant Commissioner. I haven't heard anything yet, Assistant Commissioner, that would suggest that we're going to damage something is what I'm looking for. I realize you may not want it released, but that's a different matter. So I have to tell you that I haven't heard anything yet that really precludes us from doing this. It's just one email with who it's from and to. There's no context. We don't know, what part of an investigation. So I haven't heard anything yet, but I would afford you another opportunity, sir, to make that case.
Well, again, Chair, the information contained in the investigative report is of a criminal nature. So once that's released in a public forum, then there is some jeopardy to the investigation, or there possibly could be some jeopardy. And as well, the information contained in the report is the names of people who are possible suspects or whatever in the public forum haven't been disclosed to this point.
Sir, is it the whole report or just one email that we're talking about, staff?
Actually, there's a number of emails between parties. See, the content isn't protected. The people are protected. Just to defer back to council, this is I mean, it's been announced public. This is a criminal investigation. I'm just worried about these folks who aren't part of the RCMP, some of them, and haven't been named in this forum before.
I see, and they may be just brought in and damaged as a result. Although before I relinquish the chair, last thing on the floor, rather, Chair, I just suggest, Chair, if I might, I'll leave it with you, and then I'll just say this and then relinquish the floor. But is there some way that we can take it upon ourselves, I guess, Mr. Tardy, that we can agree to hear the testimony, the evidence, the wording actually put on the record, and do we have the option of saying we will receive those names in camera to be true to our system? Do we have that luxury?
I thought that the proper way to handle this issue would have been for the, if there was references to individuals that have not been charged, and we don't want to damage anyone's reputation, that those names would be eliminated from any report that we receive. But I was, up until 3 minutes ago, clearly of the impression that once those documents got translated, they were tabled before this committee, and once they were tabled, they became a public document. But again, if we're dealing with a private matter involving a criminal investigation involving people that were never charged, I would have thought that they would be taken out of that report. Mr. Williams, you have a comment?
Mr. Chairman, just because we have the power doesn't mean to say we use it and bring into the public domain issues that are normally private by the RCMP when they're conducting a criminal investigation until such time charges are laid. Then they're entitled to conduct their business in private. I find it disappointing that these witnesses who have been here many times think that we were operating under the access to information legislation, which we're not. And what we see in the Toronto Star today, where people want to be subpoenaed by this committee rather than coming here voluntarily, shows a woeful, inadequate comprehension of the way that the parliamentary committees operate within the RCMP. And I, for one, I do not think that I've always deferred to the people's right to privacy and will only allow these names out in public if it's absolutely mandatory. And therefore, this discussion that we're having came from Mr. Brzezinski, who asked for the names of these people. It wasn't being offered by Mr. Staff Sergeant Frizzell. Therefore, I would ask that the RCMP continue on with the presentation, leaving the names out of it, and our own particular curiosity need not be satisfied at this point in time. Now, the issue that still remains to be resolved is these 15 binders. And therefore, I would suggest that the RCMP give some thought as to whether they're going to recall them, and we never actually see them, or whether they give them to us on the basis that they're embargoed, or that we decide under what basis they have to become public documents.
Or they recall them and take out the reference to the individuals.
Well, that's right.
That would be, yeah, that's what I would prefer to see happen, because I don't want to have any references to people that were referred to and not charged. Mr. Fitzpatrick.
I'm going to just try to put this in perspective. We started on this inquiry based on the Auditor General's report about some serious issues surrounding the Pension Insurance Administration, and we've spent the last 2 or 3 months trying to grapple with what went wrong and what the issues were and get a clear picture of it. I find it personally troubling that at this stage of the game, after we've had basically full disclosure before this committee, to have quotations presented to the committee which presents pretty relevant and cogent evidence about things that are relevant to our inquiry without knowing who said these things, no hint who said them. you know, there's the 4 W's in an inquiry: who, when, why, and where, and so on. We're leaving a lot out of the equation. I'm finding this a troubling way of proceeding, that we would not know the source of this information, and you know, maybe we're deviating here. I think if we're going to say, well, we're not going to ask for names because we've been doing it all along, and I'm sorry, I'm a bit puzzled by our position that we seem to be taking here, but it's the invisible man is going, and person is going to be involved in this thing, I guess, from here on in, with quotes being attributed left, right, and center, and we're going to have invisible men and women that nobody seems to know where they came from or where they fit into the picture.
Mr. Wisniewski?
I'd like to move a motion that Staff Sergeant Frizzell continue without providing the names of the senders or recipients, and that those names be provided to us in camera.
Well, Mr. Williams.
Once we've got the names, what are we going to do with them? That's the question. You know, is it for our own personal curiosity, or are we going to have these names given to us in confidence so that we can do something? What can we do with names? We say we're not an investigation committee. We don't lay criminal charges. We don't do criminal investigations. We're normally a committee of accountability. We hear the testimony and we pronounce our judgment on what we hear. And we've got ourselves into this complex and difficult situation. I can understand the need of the RCMP to give us the information which we asked for, and I can understand by the rules under which they operate that they can't divulge the names. I don't need these names. I'm not going to do anything with the names once I get them. So I really say, why are we even asking for these names in the first place?
Well, I didn't, Mr. Williams, but anyway, perhaps if I can suggest a compromise, Staff Sergeant Frizzell, I'm going to ask you to continue. Do not refer to the names. I'm going to ask you at the, perhaps at the end of the hearing, you and Chief Superintendent Macaulay can take back the binders, and Mr. Williams talks about 15 binders. It's actually 15 copies of one binder. And if there are references to confidential people, I think they should be deleted, and we're just looking at the reference for the relevant documents to deal with to try and keep this as succinct and brief as possible.
Chair, there was a motion on.
Do you want to deal with a motion? You want to put your motion now to deal with this in camera after? Okay, you can make the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I had asked to speak even before the motion was proposed.
Speaker's list. He proposed his motion.
I had asked to speak before the motion was presented. Well, I agree with Mr. Fitzpatrick. This is a very delicate situation because the documents have not been translated, so they can't be tabled. So we can't refer to the names. But I don't think the quality of the testimony will be affected. Mr. Frizzell will quote some people without mentioning who they are. The value of the work of the Public Accounts Committee is that it is public. We're in a public venue. But if we hear that so-and-so said this, so-and-so said that, without naming the people, in my opinion, well, what good is that?
Do you want to put your motion that the evidence be received in camera?
No, not the evidence, that the names, the senders and recipients of the emails, and then we can judge at that point how to proceed once we do have those names. But I do believe it is of relevance. There's a significant difference if these are emails between minor officials or emails between senior levels of the RCMP. So what I'm suggesting is a way to perhaps protect individuals that have been or may be subject to a criminal investigation, while at the same time we can do our due diligence and know what the sources of these particular emails and who the recipients were.
Mr. Christopherson.
Yeah, Chair, my only concern, and the way I think the motion is being amended, if I hear it sort of being amended, that we'll deal with the question when we get in camera. We just won't do it right now. That leaves us the option of hearing the names and positions in camera and leaving it at that. Gives us the option of bringing it public if we decide that's in the best interest. My concern about not leaving an ability right now is that I would certainly like to have Mr. Tardy and perhaps even the law clerk present to ask them what are the implications of allowing testimony to be given where at no time, anywhere, does a witness have to acknowledge where that came from or who they're talking about? It just seems to me that at some point in natural justice, there has to be an accounting that we've held this witness, not that we question his integrity, but that someone who may be damaged by all of this understands that we didn't just deal with a quote that came out of nowhere and accepted it as the truth when we haven't accepted anything else without checking it. So all of that is to say, if the amendment is that we proceed now and the question of whether names are made public or not will be dealt with in camera at a future meeting, certainly meets my needs.
Mr. Lake.
Yeah. We've been naming names throughout the entire process, and I just would like to stop for a second and have Mr. Frizzell or perhaps Mr. Moll please explain to us the difference in treatment between the people named throughout this entire process and those that we're not naming today. Why the difference in treatment?
I can only speak for myself. The only names I've named are people that were sitting at the table with me. I've made a point not to because these names are linked to the investigation, whereas others, to my observation, came out speaking of other things. He said, she said, as opposed to we investigated and found that this person did that.
So you would say that many of the names that have been named through the process by other people at other times, not by yourself, would be names that you would have not named in the same circumstance?
The other people here, I'm an investigator. I came across this information as part of a criminal investigation. That's the big difference. So I'm under different rules, and I'm under a sworn oath that what I find during a criminal investigation, I don't divulge, and that's well past the Privacy Act. That's part of my oath. So where other people are talking about their personal, I heard this from so-and-so, I saw them do that, I'm talking about what was discovered during a criminal investigation. That's the big difference, I guess, in a nutshell.
Okay. Anything to add, Mr. Moll?
No, basically that the information, as I understand it, came from the criminal investigative file, and again, although the file has a current status, I believe I've concluded that doesn't mean that it couldn't subsequently be opened again with new information that comes to light. So again, these people certainly haven't been charged, and I'm not sure that the folks that Staff Sergeant Frizzell wants to name or is being asked to name are even aware of the discussion here today or anything.
Mr. Polyev?
Yes, friends, I fear that we only have two options here. One is to demand that the names that Mr. Frizzell are quoting be given, in which case we can hear the quotes, or ask Mr. Frizzell to neither give us the names nor the quotes. It is unfair to the public to have a bunch of unnamed sources quoted into the record, people who we have the existence of which we have no evidence. It is equally unfair to hear those, unfair and underproductive to hear those names in private, because the only purpose for holding these hearings as parliamentarians is to write a report about it. And if those names cannot go in our eventual report and in our findings, then they are no more use to us in private than they would be if we didn't know them at all. We go into private, we find out all of the identities of these people for whom we're getting quotes, and we can't use their identities for anything, then why would we have their identities? Other than our personal curiosities. We couldn't achieve anything with those identities. We couldn't use their identities as evidence of anything. We couldn't use those identities to produce any sort of conclusion, because we would not be able to cite those identities in the final report. So our options are to ask Mr. Frizzell to use the privilege afforded to him before a parliamentary committee to cite the names whose words he is of the people whose words he is using, or to totally omit mention of their identity and their words. Those are the only two options that are consistent, practical, and acceptable. Thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am interested, or rather, I like Mr. Wisniewski's motion. With his motion, in fact, we can find out the names in camera, and that would allow us to clarify certain things in our own minds and perhaps to connect the dots. It might help us better understand some situations without having to speculate every time who may have said this, who may have said that. It would also give us more tools if we do decide to make it public or not, of course in cooperation and in discussion with the RCMP.
Yeah, the comment by Assistant Commissioner Moll, I think, was important. When we started this little discussion, Staff Sergeant Frizzell said there was an ongoing criminal investigation. And when there's an ongoing criminal investigation, I tread very carefully around these issues. However, I think Assistant Commissioner Moll said the investigation had concluded and no charges were laid, which that does actually put a different light on the matter. And am I correct in saying that, Assistant Commissioner, that the investigation has been concluded? I'm not asking whether you agree whether charges should or should not have been laid. I said, has the investigation been concluded and no charges have been laid?
I haven't been involved in the criminal investigation.
Okay, let me ask Staff Sergeant Frizzell, have charges been laid?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you expect charges to be laid?
No.
Okay, that actually throws a different light on the issue, Mr. Chairman. If it's, in essence, it's not before the courts.
Is there an ongoing, and is it still being...
Is there an ongoing investigation? That I don't believe there is.
Mr. Brown's would be the only one.
Mr. Brown is the only one, and that's not this investigation. Well, we will debate that one. And therefore, it's not before the courts, Mr. Chairman, and people have to be held accountable for what they write. And therefore, I'm now leaning towards the idea that we let these names out in public, because these are public servants writing and making decisions and so on, and it's up to us as an investigation to put this in the public domain. So my objections are perhaps not there anymore now that I know it's not before the court.
Scroll, you have a comment?
Mr. Frizzell, you have brought so many witnesses and given us so many tons of information to date. How crucial and critical is it that you read out the emails that we're currently discussing?
My apologies to the committee. I thought this would bring clarity. Just because of the whole he said, she said nature, rather than me sitting here yammering on about what I believed happened, I would read to you the exact words of the people who were involved. And I can preface it with that a criminal investigation did happen, that no charges were laid, that I have an interpretation of these words, but these words may be interpreted completely different by yourselves or by a court. So I just quite simply don't want to make myself a target by breaching any
Are
laws.
we going to have a significant difference from what we've already heard as a result of you giving us the information from the emails? Is it going to change anything from what we've already heard?
I don't think I can draw a conclusion there.
Okay, thank you.
Point of order. What's going on?
I have a question.
No. Hold on, I have a speaker's list.
Oh, is there? Well, then I just have to be put on the list.
I must stop. I mean, we've heard people say this is a committee of accountability, so we can have quotes from unnamed sources that are very important evidence. But the person that made the quote, we're guessing at who's where this quote came from. How can you have accountability without knowing who said it? It's an impossibility. And so I'm really puzzled at that argument, that we can have accountability without knowing who said what. Like this is unreal. And the point about us going in camera with the names now, I wish I had Mr. Christofferson's quotes on some of this thing. But, you know, we can bring these names in our own little secret meetings and go over them. I guess maybe we'll have some special insights that the public can't address and so on, and we can be the guardians. I think that's a position I don't really think is tenable, and I really don't want to take. And the second point I'll say on it, in-camera names and so on in this committee, we haven't had a very good track record of keeping them in camera. They'll probably be in the press the day after we get them, and so what is that going to accomplish? I mean, we've seen that enough times to know that isn't going to work. So if we're going to proceed with Boris's motion, I think we better go in there with our eyes wide open, because the names are going to get out. Because somebody in this committee or in the past has been releasing names out of in-camera, and it's going to happen again. And that's, you know, I think this is the points I make on it. There's no accountability without knowing where those quotations came from.
Mr. Wisniewski.
As I was the one that originally requested the names be given to us in this committee, and I had attempted to provide an accommodation after some of the comments that had been made on the opposite side that would give us the option of getting the names and going public with them after hearing who these individuals were. I'm more than happy, now that I see that a consensus has been arrived at, to go back to my original request and request that I'll remove my motion and request that the names be tabled along with the emails.
It seems to be, we seem to be a consensus emerged on that point. Mr. Poilev is next. Mr. Williams. Mr. Poilev.
I want to get to the core of your concern here. Were these emails derived from your investigative work?
Yes.
Okay. Are you concerned that if you reveal the identity of sources of that investigation, you will then discredit yourself as a trustworthy gatherer of information in your future investigations? Is that what you're worried about here?
Not so much that. I'm worried that I'm breaching my duty as a peace officer, gathering information. I agree with Mr.
So you're worried about you're going to be breaching your duties as a police officer.
Yes. Normally, in a court setting, I would give this information, but the people I'm talking about could be called.
Mr. Chairman. Point of order?
I'm in the chair's hands.
Okay. Then my question then is,
point of order.
Well, is it a point of order or what?
It is.
Get on to it.
Okay, Mr. Fitzpatrick, a point of order. Okay, let's hear Mr. Fitzpatrick.
We follow parliamentary procedure. We follow rules here. The rule that I understand is there is no privilege before the parliamentary committee. The privilege that he's raising, maybe our legal counsel can enlighten us on that, but for a police officer to say he has got a legal bound duty to keep this information, well, it is a point of order. I want to know whether that's the rule or not.
No point of order here.
We go by rules here, and that's my understanding the rule, that that's not a privilege.
Chair,
okay.
I actually have
Mr. Williams for a comment.
Chair,
let's put this to bed, Mr.
Now I have a point of order.
I
actually have a point of order.
Well,
I've finished my questions. I've never got a chance to do that. So if I could just proceed with the rest of my speaking time, I'll wrap up very quickly. Thank you. Are there any, in your understanding of the law, is there anything prohibiting Sergeant Frizzell from bringing the information forward of the identity of people who have provided him with that information throughout his investigation? Is there anything from a legal point of view?
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that Sergeant Frizzell, as an experienced police officer, has had to respect all of the statutes and the jurisprudence that deal with police work throughout his career. That's what he's used to, and that's what he is bringing as his custom and habit to this committee. The rules in this forum are somewhat different. If the committee demands the information, my understanding is that under parliamentary law, the witness has to reply. And in that sense, parliamentary privilege trumps the professional obligations, even those derived from statute and jurisprudence.
So what you're saying
but sorry, if I may just finish that point, there may be some way of accommodating the situation in the sense that the committee may decide to hear this kind of evidence in camera if the committee...
Chair, that's not my question. I have a very specific question. Is there any aspect of law that would prevent Mr. Frizzell from bringing forward this information to this committee? That's all we need to know, so that we can proceed with knowledge of the law.
Mr. Chairman, the short form of the answer has to be no.
Okay.
Yes.
I would hope we can bring this to a conclusion, Mr. Chairman. And we have heard Staff Sergeant Frizzell's concern about his oath, and I'm glad that he takes it seriously. He's now apprised that parliamentary privilege trumps his oath, and therefore he would be, I suggest that he be judicious if he feels somewhat constrained that when he quotes from emails, but I would not have him feel that he can't. And if you, Mr. Chairman, on behalf of this committee, direct him to answer that question, and he is required, as our law clerk, Mr. Tardy, has told us, to answer all questions put to him that overrides and supersedes the oath that he has with the RCMP. So each time a name comes up that he feels that under his professional conduct he can't name, he can be directed by you to do so, and that way he is protected by his oath and protected and fulfills his obligation to the general public.
I believe we have a consensus emerged that we're going to continue with the presentation by Staff Sergeant Frizzell, and that he will be, if it's germane to his presentation, he will be referring to the names in the email. So I'm going to turn the floor back to you, Staff Sergeant Frizzell.
This is going to be kind of anticlimactic here now, but I understand now that I'm in the chair's hands. You're asking that I provide the names of the people?
I'm demanding that you provide the names of the people.
Okay. So back to where we were. The two people, or the people that were involved in the meeting, were Dominic Krupe, Pat Casey, and Gary Roy. Dominic Krupe, you all know. Pat Casey was a consultant that was hired several times over within NCPC. And Mr. Roy is a civilian member of the RCMP. It was Mr. Casey that sent the email saying that the...
That's not the inspector at, the Ottawa Police. Just for the record, Mr. Chairman.
It's a fairly common name in Ottawa. So it was Mr. Casey. It was Mr. Casey that sent the email around saying that this meeting was rescheduled. It was Mr. Roy that replied, smooth. My interpretation of that was that everyone had bought the reasoning, even though it was untrue. 4 days later, within Great West Life conversation, the way someone from Great West Life was speaking to Mr. Casey, and her recollection of the conversation was that the way Pat spoke, that's Pat Casey, it almost sounds as if it's a done deal unless the cost is prohibitive. So within 4 days of being told that Great West Life cannot do the administration of the insurance, it seems that there's a done deal with Morno Sebeco. That same day, a letter is received at NCPC with a proposal from Morno Sebeco. This is important because later on, or is what you've been told up till now, is that Great West Life subcontracted the administration duties to Morno Sebeco. It's clear from this that Morno Sebeco made the pitch to NCPC, got approvals, got the thumbs up to be the administrator, and then later They were concerned about how to make that happen. At that time, the ongoing fees are quoted at $46,000 a month, with implementation fees of $450,000. Again, this is significant. Great-West Life had just received $250,000 for implementation or startup fees. Now Morneau-Sebeco is going to charge an estimated $450,000. By the time they were done, it was over $600,000. Later that month, Mr. Roy and Mr. Casey have another email exchange in which Mr. Roy states, "Uh-oh, the foxes have the scent." Mr. Casey's reply seems to indicate that someone is asking questions about the insurance sourcing, and he is devising answers that will put her off the scent. Mr. Roy replies, "Sounds good, and we should be able to come out of the closet soon as well." This would seem to indicate that, again, that they are keeping it well hidden, that they are having these negotiations with Morneau-Sebeco. Around on February 4th of 2002, we have a business case that appears for the insurance outsourcing. It's around this time that they realize that if they just go to Morneau-Sebeco as the outsourcer, people are going to ask questions. So 2 consultants, Mr. Casey and a person named Jeff Molson, are sent to Great-West Life to discuss the possibility of having, and this is a quote, to discuss the possibility of having the insurance administration contract with Great-West Life as prime and Morneau-Sebeco as a sub. Great-West Life will investigate the possibility of this option, but mention some concerns. These concerns were that they were stuck in the middle of a deal that they didn't want to be part of. However, a couple of weeks later, an email within Great-West Life states that they discussed it with their legal department and they were prepared to contract with the RCMP for the services and then subcontract to Morneau under certain conditions. So again, this shows that Great-West Life was not the administrator at this point, but they were going to be injected into this process. On March 15th of 2002, a business case, final draft of the business.
I'm just concerned that some of these questions that are very specific, if I leave them to the end, may be difficult for Staff Sergeant Frizzell to go back. Is it better to leave these specifics to the end for questioning, or if we have a question on detail as you go, is it easier?
We don't want to interrupt him every sentence, Mr. Sweet, but I mean, if there is something that you think he's misleading the committee on, or he should be, if you're looking for more clarification, you can.
Well, now that we have stopped, it was just I wanted to get a specific answer of who was the author of the business case that showed up on February 4th, 2002.
I believe Pat Casey was the author.
Thank you.
The final draft of that business case appears to have been done on March 15th of 2002, and it contained an evaluation grid that would make it appear that a proper bid evaluation took place. What this evaluation grid showed was a bid from Great-West Life, a bid from Morneau-Sebeco, versus keeping it internal and showing the costings, and son of a gun, Morneau-Sebeco won. When we interviewed the people who were supposed to have been part of that bid evaluation committee, they told us that no such process ever took place. This was merely a paper exercise to add legitimacy to the process. So in April of 2002, an email within Great-West Life states, as a three-way if the RCMP balked at a three-way agreement, we will split it into two-way agreements. So Great-West Life wanted a three-way agreement between the RCMP, Morneau-Sebeco, and Great-West Life. The reply is, and this is from Great-West Life internally, The RCMP will not want a three-way agreement. They will want us to subcontract with Morno Sebeco. They want to avoid putting things out to tender through PWGSC. We're dealing with a 50-year client that has never had a documented agreement with us. Getting things on paper could be a challenge. This creates quite a bit of fuss back and forth. Great West Life is being asked to act as a conduit. There's nothing in it for them except to retain the RCMP as a client. An internal email within Great West Life. A Great West Life representative has had discussions with the RCMP. In the discussion, they indicated that they would like to avoid signing any agreement, as this would require involvement of the Commissioner and RCMP legal. Somehow, they would just like to be able to do it through a letter of authorization. If we go the agreement route, it may force a tendering process. The reply to that is, regarding the RCMP's request that no agreement be signed, the Law Department has some serious concerns related to the risk involved in proceeding this way. Of course they do. So these agreements are going back and forth, these legal agreements, and RCMP legal is being kept out of the loop. This is contractors and Mr. Krupe's shop that are going back and forth. At one point, Mr. Casey sends a copy of a contract to another consultant saying, Dom suggested that you and your colleagues could review these clauses and give us your interpretations/suggestions concerning the following. So instead of using legal services, he's asking another consultant to have a look at this. This is a significant risk to both the RCMP, the members of the RCMP, and the Government of Canada, and this is the way it's being handled. While all this is going on, a briefing note is being written by a young man in corporate procurement. He had noted all the things that were happening within both the internal procurement, and he also found out, just before he wrote this briefing note, he found out about what was going on at CAC, that Mr. Krupe had gone to CAC, and at that point it had, the Consulting and Audit Canada, the KPMG reference there. He wrote a briefing note that started with the issue, questionable contracting practices relating to the pension reform project, and more specifically related to Mr. Dominic Krupe, the project manager. Mr. Krupe entered into a number of service agreements with CAC totaling more than $2.5 million. Mr. Krupe does not have the delegation of contracting authority to enter into these agreements. This is a two-page and a little bit briefing note, the last recommendation being a letter of notice is to be submitted to CAC to inform them of our delegations of authority matrix and that no other representatives other than RCMP procurement personnel have the authority to enter into these agreements on behalf of the RCMP. So while Mr. Krupe is trying to negotiate yet another very questionable contract, this young man is bringing to attention of senior members of the RCMP all of these goings-on. The author was a Mr. Sean Dufour, who has since passed away. The date of it was the week of between July 10th and July 17th of 2002. This is very significant to me because here's a young man, member of the public service.
Sent to the CAC people?
No, it never went to CAC as far as we could tell. It was stopped long before that. It was brought to the attention of the senior procurement personnel and Mr. Krupe's supervisor, and according to the senior procurement personnel, it was brought to Mr. Govan's attention as well. The point being that while this was going on, a red flag came up about Mr. Krupe and what he was doing, and very little came of that. So we have yet another email. This time it's between Great West Life and Morno Sebeco. You have to understand these two companies are a little frustrated by now. They're being asked to do something very unorthodox. And Great West Life states to Morno Sebeco, if circumstances permitted, the RCMP and Morno Sebeco would contract directly, and Great West Life would have no additional liabilities. Great West Life's role is one of being a conduit so that Morno Sebeco can provide the required services to the RCMP. Our main role in the agreement is to simply pay the authorized bills. We finally the two companies reach an impasse, and Morno Sebeco is quite exasperated and sends an email to Great West Life. We are not prepared to give the RCMP a direct indemnity in this agreement. I don't pretend to know what that means, but it sounds to me like they're not going to cover the RCMP's butt in the agreement between Morno Sebeco and Great West Life. First, they say, the RCMP is not a party to this agreement. The agreement deals with our contractual obligations to you, Great West Life. This underlies the fundamental nature of a subcontracting relationship. Great West Life replies, this may be, but practically speaking, everyone understands that Great West Life is merely a conduit for payment. The real relationship is between Morno Sebeco and the RCMP. This argument is strengthened by considering the real nature of this arrangement. That's from Great West Life Legal. The point to all this being that neither company is comfortable with what they're doing, but they're trying to make it work for their client. So Great West Life then writes another internal email talking about a conversation they had with Mr. Casey. Pat now understands that Great West Life will not indemnify the RCMP for damages related to the performance of services by Morno Sebeco. In other words, if Morno Sebeco screws up, Great West Life isn't going to wear it. It was made clear to Pat that as it stands, the RCMP cannot rely on indemnification from either Great West Life or Morno Sebeco. I advised Pat to obtain the advice of his own law department as to the way to manage this risk. He replied that he didn't want to involve them. The idea behind reading these is so you could hear the actual words going back and forth. My interpretation of what I read was that these two companies are doing something that they're not at all comfortable with, but they're doing it at the behest of their client. The other thing that this is important for is when this agreement is eventually set up, it has to be paid. And part of the deal was that you've heard about earlier was money coming from the pension and going into the insurance. Morno Sebeco was going to charge far more than what they'd anticipated was going to cost. The plans were never designed to pay for administration, only premiums and only claims and underwriting costs. So the plans would be drained at quite a rate. They came up with this idea, when I say they, I mean contractors working at NCPC, of taking money out of the insurance plans. But in order to do that, somebody had to sign the bills.
Why again did, is it NCPC, why were they so anxious to go with Morno Sebeco? What was the win for them?
The win was we had just taken on Morno Sebeco as the pension outsourcer, so it's keeping it within the newly formed family.
So it's a matter of their convenience. They just think it's easier. You're not finding anything else questionable about their motivation for doing these unorthodox things?
We specifically did not look into that.
I see. Thank you.
We were specifically told not to look into it.
Why?
You'd have to ask Mr. Dave Cork.
Good. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Actually, I was given a reason. It wasn't part of the mandate of the investigation.
Keeps on showing up. What was Pat Casey?
Pat Casey was a consultant hired to do the insurance outsourcing.
And is that Kim Casey's husband?
Yes, I believe it is. The agreements go into place in April of 2003. Now we have a whole bunch of bills to pay, both for the $600,000 in setup costs, plus the ongoing bills to supplement the insurance plans. An invoice is sent to our finance section, who, from my understanding of the FAA, when you find a breach of the FAA, you're to report it up. What happened was they simply told NCPC, you need a contract, go see procurement, which they did. This is the same procurement section that we're very well aware of Mr. Krupe's goings-on with contracting, both within the force and within the CAC. And Mr. Krupe brings to them, NCPC brings to them these two contracts that you've just heard about how they were put together. This creates quite a stir, but they're paid. The different documentation is done up to authorize this. It's signed by Mr. Krupe, by Mr. Krupe's boss, by Mr. Ivanovich, who's Mr. Krupe's boss's boss.
Chair, point of order. When the staff sergeant's referring to the bosses, if we could have the names.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Mr. Krupe's boss at the time was Chief Superintendent Yves Bouchard, whose boss at the time was Jim Ivanovich, and then it was also signed by a procurement representative, then Inspector Guy Rochette. What happened? We don't actually know exactly what happened here. There's very poor memories around this event. What we do know for sure is that two people from NCPC took an agreement to then Deputy Commissioner Lange, who was the chair of the Insurance Committee. Mr. Lange signed an agreement that basically committed the RCMP to $6.3 million to be paid out over 2, 4, 6, 8 fiscal years to cover the cost of the insurance, and 40% of those costs would be taken out of the pension. When it came to the procurement office, they decided not to send it to legal. They decided that Mr. Krupe had signed on the line, therefore he had ostensible authority. I learned the word ostensible much like I learned the word fulsome. It was new to me, but I became intimate with it. Ostensible authority, was, as it was explained to me, was that nobody from outside could tell that Mr. Krupe wasn't a bona fide member or representative of the RCMP, and therefore they wouldn't question that he could sign this contract, therefore the RCMP would be liable, so they had to pay these bills. You heard evidence before this committee that was the interpretation of our chief financial officer. The truth of the matter is, the bills came from Great West Life. As we've heard, Great West Life did no work. They were merely the conduit for payment. Had anybody picked up the phone, had anybody done any no little checks, whatsoever, due diligence is definitely the term here. They would have found out exactly what I found out, and believe me, I'm no financial or procurement expert. The bills were paid. This was September of 2003. You've heard evidence that as soon as finance knew about it, they had to pay the initial bill, but immediately they put an end to it and made it all better. The evidence is also that the monies weren't paid back to the pension until March of 2005, after the investigation found it and made it quite an issue. So I'll leave it to you to draw your conclusions, but a year and a half seems to be a long time to continue paying bills that you believe shouldn't be paid. If you just give me a moment to catch up to myself. Of note, something I skimmed over here, but when young Mr. Dufour had written the briefing note talking about Mr. Krupe's issues, Mr. Krupe obviously wasn't too concerned, as a week later he wrote to his boss saying that he needed a promotion because of all his responsibilities. He should be bumped from an EX1 to an EX2.
The name once again?
Sorry, Mr. Krupe?
His boss.
Oh, sorry. His boss at that time was Mike Seguin, who was chief at the time, assistant at the time? Oh, who was an assistant commissioner of the RCMP. Also of note that year, so it's even the person that ruled on the ostensible authority said that, we're going to have to pay it, in his opinion. But he states in his email where he gives that opinion, furthermore, it is critical to the interests of the force that the performance by the aforementioned individual, Mr. Krupe, be addressed immediately as to mitigate any and all further occurrences and possible risks to the RCMP. This is the year that Mr. Krupe actually made a performance bonus 5 times the average in the public service.
Quotation, who do we attribute that to?
Staff Sergeant Stu McDonald, who was a legally trained member working in procurement at the time. So that's what happened with the investigation. What happened when I found all this out, I was taken aback. And as far as I could tell, although there was a lot of questions around procurement's actions and corporate's actions, it seemed to me that the senior members of the RCMP, once they knew about this, would do something about it right away. And that's why I told it to Mr. Roy, who then said, well, you've got to tell Mr. Gork. I told this whole deal to Mr. Gork, whose response was, oh my God, I'm paraphrasing. But he immediately set up a meeting with Ms. George. His response to me was, Barb has to know about this. So in February 9th, actually, of 2005, I met with Ms. George. Mr. Roy and Mr. Gork were with me, and I explained all this. I further explained something that I haven't covered here, but I'll briefly cover, was the way the monies were being taken from the plans weren't based on, by this time, weren't based on effort. It was based on which plans had the most money. So it seemed that most of the money was being taken out of, the highest percentage was being taken out of the disability insurance, which is 85% funded by Treasury Board, which was the richest plan and which would have noticed the money draining from it the least. So that seemed to be a red flag as well for me. So I explained all this to Ms. George on February 9th. Again, before I explained this was at Mr. Gork's urging, and he thought this was a big deal. The following day, on February 10th, I received an email, on February 9th, I received the email that I've already read into the record, that Mr. Gork felt that I'd done a very good job and that I explained it very well. But the next day I received an email that's addressed to both myself and Mr. Roy. Gentlemen, after our discussions of the past 2 days and knowing that you are meeting with the audit personnel today, I would like to underline the aspect that once you have determined that there are no criminal charges to come out of the insurance stream, then we turn our information as to the workings over to the audit personnel for their follow-up. If there will be any charges, we will carry on as normal. I do not want us spending time on investigations that we know are not criminal in nature. So this is just an example of Mr. Gork giving direction to both Mr. Roy and myself as to how the investigation should go. I reply that, as far as I was concerned, that was the stream that charges were going to come out of. And Mr. Roy replies back to me that he and I need to sit down and he needs more details about it. So again, that's just to give you an idea. There was a drastic change in Mr. Gork's outlook. An internal audit had started at that portion as well, an internal audit into the insurance. it's important that there was some indication that our investigation would be shut down and the internal audit would be allowed to go on, much the same as happened at the beginning of the investigation, or sorry, much as the same as what happened back in 2003. I was adamant that that not happen again, and my personal relationship with some of the auditors, I struck a deal that we would work together as what should have happened in the first place. Just on that note, something else I forgot to mention, the contracts that were signed that allowed the money to go from the pension into the insurance funds, they were signed in the middle of the internal audit. The first one, the one that was called after the investigation was canceled. So even though the NCPC, they were breathing down their necks, they were still able to work these deals. In March of 2005, I met with Deputy Commissioner Govan and a number of others from Finance and HR. The meeting was all about the insurance, and I've given evidence previously, but I'll just summarize by saying that my interpretation of that meeting was that the money was, the RCMP was going to take back responsibility for the administration. Up till this point, the audit had also found that it was inappropriate for the monies to be being removed. So it wasn't just the investigation. The internal audit found the exact same thing, that it was inappropriate for the monies to be removed from the insurance plans for the administration. My understanding was that was going to stop, and then they were going to look for authority to pay back the monies that were already removed. My understanding from the evidence that I've heard since is that was the intent, but the evidence is that even though that was the intent, they received a legal opinion that they couldn't do that. My understanding is the legal opinion was received a month or so after the money had already been taken out, so the timeline's a little off there. I don't find out about the money being removed from the insurance plans, that $500,000, until June, when Mr. Roy sends me an email, or sorry, he actually called me into his office to point out, and I've given this evidence, but he pointed out that another $542,000 plus had been removed from the insurance plans and asked me if I knew about it. I did not. It came as quite a shock. I asked Mr. Roy to forward that email to me so I would have it, which I do. And immediately called the chief financial officer. As at this meeting that I talked about, he was put in charge of putting together an insurance committee to figure all this out. He and I met. I expressed my concerns. He stated that he remembered things a little differently than I did. No, this would have been a gentleman named Claude Caron. He reported to Mr. Gauvin. But he agreed that, he said, this is an HR decision, it's an HR issue, which you've heard a few times here. But he agreed to set up a meeting with himself, HR, and he would have me along to try and provide the information to hopefully set the record straight. At the same time, I contacted members of the insurance committee to find out how it was, because I'd been told that they had agreed to this money coming out of the plans. When I contacted them, they told me that no, actually they hadn't agreed to the money. In fact, they were assured at the meeting that the money was coming out of the RCMP's budget, not the plans. I asked him if he had seen the minutes, because the minutes said something different entirely. He then asked for a copy of the minutes, determined that the minutes were different than his...
Chair, once again, the he...
Sorry, the gentleman in question is... his name is Brad Chugg. At the time, he was a div rep and a member of the insurance committee. I believe, I have strong reason to believe that Mr. Chugg since laid a complaint, forwarded it to Ms. George, complaining that the minutes had been changed and that the person who changed the minutes knew full well what he was doing. To my knowledge, that was never investigated, but perhaps Mr. Moll knows more about that than I do.
Who made that statement?
Mr. Chugg. I spoke to another member of the committee, a gentleman named Alan Burchell, who is a retired, I believe, a retired assistant commissioner of the RCMP, and he agreed that at the meeting it was agreed the money would come out of the RCMP's A base and not the. Whether the insurance committee agreed to or not is really a side issue, but the fact that somebody thought it was important enough to apparently falsify the minutes.
Krupe still around at that time?
No. Well, from the evidence I've heard here, apparently he was still on the books, but he wasn't working.
He was being paid, though.
Apparently. That's when I made the phone call to Rosalie Burton. We've all heard, and that phone call was because the meeting that Mr. Caron had set up, I received notification that it had been canceled, and had been canceled by Ms. Burton. I called her, I expressed my very sincere and very profound concern that I'm writing up the final report for this big investigation, and that I want to be able to put in there that, yes, all this happened, all this nonsense happened, but as soon as the senior members of the RCMP found out about it, an end was put to it and it was made right. It was shortly after that that I was summoned to Ms. George's office. It was shortly after that that I didn't go, and then we know the part about me being ordered off the investigation. And I believe, and that takes us up to slide K, and that's where my presentation ends. And Chief Superintendent Macaulay begins, but of course I'm available for questions.
So I will just do a quick recap, summary of what basically we've gone through here today. Just before I do that, I think it's important the committee understand that you can imagine as Staff Sergeant Frizzell had started to get down this path and started to work on these things and started to see again that more money was coming out of the fund, this was when he was removed. And this is when the order was made that we've all heard about, and the reference is made to.
Point of order? Yeah, just for the same for Chief Superintendent Macaulay, that he be instructed that he has to supply names where appropriate, so that he is no longer bound by his oath at the RCMP, that if this committee requires the names, that we have to be given these names.
Yes, Chief Superintendent Macaulay, I instruct you to make full disclosure in your testimony. I also would ask you to, I know it's difficult, we're in a little difficult position here with the way it's flowing, but if you could just try and don't refer to bosses or he or they, just kind of make it so that it does flow for the members of the committee.
Great, thank you. As I was stating, it was at that time that Staff Sergeant Frizzell got removed from this investigation and the investigation was stopped. I think it's imperative that, as you've heard as a committee, the phone call was played back to you. The testimony that's been brought forward since then has been about numerous other events, including people suggesting that the interviews that Mr. Frizzell had done throughout this investigation, whether it be with Mrs. Belmare, with Mr. Hutchinson, with Mr. Iwanovich, were all people of which he did not interview. The key components,
Mr. Hutchinson.
The key components were back to this was the events that led to his removal, and as you can now start to piece together, there were some serious issues that he was dealing with as a police officer to try to get to the bottom of this. So having said that, I'm just going to quickly go over what has been hopefully said to you folks today. It starts in 1953 with the RCMP insurance fund being paid and administered through funds coming from Treasury Board. In 1995, there's an MOU to Great West Life not to the employees and not with the knowledge of the employees of the RCMP or with the knowledge of Treasury Board, that changes the benefits without consultation. In other words, it was at that time during program renewal that due to some cutbacks in our budgeting from Treasury Board, a decision was made to start administering the pension, the insurance funds from the members' funds and no longer from Treasury Board appropriations. In 1997, this got further entrenched into the organization, and in 1998 got even further entrenched with the changing of employees' relationships in regards to the RCMP and back to a Great West Life, and the addition of the disability insurance plan. By 2000, NCPC's insurance administration outsourced decision gets made, and it's being done under the guise of that it's good for the members of the plan and that this is a good thing for the members, and not as much about the issues which were, again, management-driven around the fact that there was an evergreening process with regards to the insurance computer systems and those types of things that needed to be corrected. Great West Life then spends $250,000 or $250,000 out of the members' funds to examine the outsourcing responsibilities with no contract, no issues, or no anything else, and again, the members are paying for that. By 2002, Morno Sebeco, who has been approved as the pension outsourcer through an appropriate process, is then asked to do the administration outsourcing of the RCMP's insurance plans, and they spend another $612,000 out of the plan in order for them to adjust and determine what they need to be able to do. With the assistance of NCPC and Great West Life, Morno Sebeco then signs an agreement for $800,000 or thereabouts a year to conduct the administration of the benefits for the members. And again, now all of this money is coming out of the members' funds as opposed to the administration that should be coming out of Treasury Board appropriations. During that time, RCMP Corporate Services Procurement facilitates that contract after they find out about it, don't do their due diligence, and the contract is signed, and today we are still living that. At that same time, because of the increase in costs from the $400 and such money that was the $400 and something thousand that was proposed to the insurance committee, when the bills are now coming in around $800,000, the decision is made to start pulling it from the lucrative pension fund plan, which has been sitting on the sidelines and you've heard about, that was just a cash cow for the organization and NCPC. So as a result, we now have 40% coming out of there and 60% coming out of the funds, out of the regular members, the serving members' funds. What's interesting to note is that the 40% was then covered up under the guise of being administrative and O&M costs under the PACP committee or the Pension Advisory Committee. We have heard that numerous people, the senior managers, sat on that Pension Advisory Committee, including the Chief Financial Officer, and when you look at the books and start to see that the costs for PAC increased that year by close to the $600,000 or $700,000 that were the cost, there was no question by the senior managers of that table as to why all of a sudden there was an overrun of $700,000 on the PAC committee. But it's all there, it's all documented, the money is showing there, but no questions are being asked as to where that money is going. And it's not for the pension administration committee, it's just simply being taken out under that guise and put into our insurance administration. In 2005, when senior management are shown the facts and what has taken place, we run into the issue around the minutes. Great West Life continues to take money out of the plans. Staff Sergeant Frizzell is removed, and the investigation is concluded. As of today, we are now still 2007, and we are still paying the same way we were in 2005. As you've heard today, from our conclusion is there was a deliberate plan to circumvent legal authorities, including a lack of personnel, including a lack of personal accountability, and inappropriate responses to those that were asking or assuring or trying to assure accountability. Members of the NCPC were more concerned about their reputation than doing the right thing, both corporately and personally. As a lot of you have heard and asked questions throughout the time that we've been here, it's around why did people do this and what did they get out of it? One of the key beneficiaries of these things is around people's personal insurance, personal pension plans themselves. when individuals were examined and to the fact that the increases in both their salaries and then their pension contributions for their best 5, you'll see a substantial increase that will now carry them until the time of their subjective lives, which should be somewhere around their 80s, with a huge benefit to them personally. While the money didn't go personally into their pocket, over the next 30 years they're going to benefit from the promotions that they received and from the fact that their salaries have gone up and these bonuses, which are all part of the your pension. In Mr. Krupe's case, the 18 months, as you can imagine, the 18 months that he sat on suspension with pay, what was falling off the lower end of his salary in comparison to the salary that he was now at is almost double. And therefore, his pension is increasing for the next 30 years as a result of him being able to sit at home. These are the impacts that people and employees are seeing and around their behaviors. So again, while it's not a direct link into their pockets, there are extreme issues that needed to be looked at in order to determine the motive behind some of these decisions. The question today, sir, when you ask around the questions of what happened and why Morneau and why all of these, it is the same questions that all of us had in 2003 when we first started looking into this. It was our belief that by getting these people, including Staff Sergeant Frizzell and other members of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, to investigate, that these folks would have dug into those issues, and especially around kickbacks or any other motives that would have relied to this. We have heard at this committee, both whether it's Mr. Gauvin, that they hid money and did things around their PAC meetings, and Mr. Krupe, who openly admitted that he had received some forms of tickets, etc., but once he found out they were stopped. When these folks were questioned, they were unable to continue along that path and along that stream and have never been able to search as to where all this money and excess money went. The pieces of the pie that have been referred to on numerous occasions at this table were never followed up as to why people would go and contract 3 people down for exorbitant funds of money if there was no value back to them. Those were the streams that were not improperly investigated, and those led to the complaints that we made with you in our first instance. The bottom line for us is that this is just another stream that adds up to a breach of trust that was never laid and never able to be brought forward through the courts. And that's where we're at today.
Thank you very much. Before we go to questions, do you have anything to add, Mr. Mall, Mr. Pickett?
No, Mr. Chair. I haven't seen any of the information presented today except for the deck last evening.
Okay, and Officer Pickett, anything to add?
No, sir. I sort of came into this situation in December of 2005 and 2006, and my basically is to look forward what the RCMP has done to try and rectify some of the issues that were brought forward. I'm here for questions with regard to that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Point of order.
Okay, I'd just like to know whether this is a personal presentation by Staff Sergeant Frizzell and Fraser McCauley, or is this a presentation by the RCMP? And I think I would like to think it was a presentation by the RCMP as an official presentation of the force, and I think it should be taken in that light.
I'll invite Mr. Staff Chief Superintendent McCauley to respond.
I can tell you that the presentation was this presentation was run through these 2 gentlemen yesterday, and previous to that we ran it through other people both from NCPC and Corporate Services, and the purpose of that was to ensure that the facts that are being put before the committee are exact facts. That's why these 2 gentlemen are here today. If you have any clarity that you would like around it, this is the corporate position as far as I'm concerned. And that's why we're here with our logos, etc., on the paper.
Well, thank you very much. We don't have a lot of time left. What I'd like to do is just start a round of 5 minutes and go as far as we can. Mr. Rosniski, 5 minutes.
If necessary, I'll share my time. Mr. Gauvin sat on PAC committee. Is that correct?
Correct.
And a number of these issues were raised in PAC committee, so he would have been aware of these various problematic issues. Is that correct?
He was at attendance, and on some of the minutes you will see he was present when these discussions were taking place, and I believe he was questioned before this committee around a presentation he received from Morneau Sabeco.
Do we have any idea? Mr. Gauvin testified before us here that he pulled Mr. Krupe's contracting authority during the time that supposedly Mr. Krupe's contracting authority was pulled by Mr. Gauvin, do we know approximately how much Mr. Krupe signed off on? Perhaps Mr. Frizzell?
Mr. Krupe would have had standard authority of a director, which I believe is $5,000 for goods and $10,000 for services.
Okay. And while the internal audit was going on, how much would, do you have any idea of the sort of numbers we might be looking at that he was signing off on while he was under investigation through the internal audit?
$6.3 million. That's just the one contract. There was lots of others.
Okay. Also, in testimony before us here, Barb George has given us various conflicting versions of the reasons why you were removed off the investigation. And she referred to your interview techniques. And Rosalie Burton named an individual, Mr. Belmer. Did you interview that particular individual? That this individual was quite emotionally stressed?
No, I did not.
Okay. I'd like to pass it on to Ms. Groth.
Yeah, Mr. Frizzell, you've raised a lot of points again today, and certainly the emails and verification of the individuals that you spoke to back and forth are there to substantiate a fair amount of this information. Is there anything else that you haven't shared with this committee that you think we should know as we go forward to start producing a recommendation?
The investigational binder is over 300 pages, so I'm trying to be selective and give you... I'm hoping what you heard today lets you see the nature of the dealings that were going on and the complete inability of the people that were in place to stop those goings-on.
We have talked about having a public inquiry here at the committee. And do I suggest that you're fully in favor of there being a public inquiry?
Williams, point of order.
I don't think it's a position to ask a staff sergeant or a chief superintendent of the RCMP whether we should have a public inquiry. That's a political decision. It's not a decision of the force, and therefore I don't think it's an appropriate question.
Well, if I can just clarify, Mr. Chair, asking Mr. Frizzell if he feels that it would be beneficial to have a public inquiry, clearly knowing it is our decision to go forward with it as a committee if we want to make that recommendation. I'm simply asking him if he feels there is additional information that would be beneficial through a public inquiry.
Chairman, but on my point of order, he's sitting here. He made a presentation as a member of the RCMP. He's sitting here in uniform, and I don't think it's appropriate to ask any of these gentlemen sitting before us whether that's appropriate.
Mr. Williams, I allow a certain latitude. The committee has already spoken on the issue of a public inquiry. The answer that this witness will give adds nothing to the debate whatsoever. That decision is not made by this committee, but I'll allow the question. Ms. Groh, and then your time is up.
That's his opinion.
Truthfully, I have no opinion. I've been through enough sitting in front of a public inquiry.
Monsieur Laforêt, yes.
Yes. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the course of the first testimony we heard, Mr. McCauley, you said that Ms. Barb George, you spoke with her and you shared some of your concerns with her, which we've discussed today. You said you were alone on your island. Now you've delivered the RCMP's position today. Do you feel a little less alone on your island today? Oh, there's no doubt, sir, since the beginning of the hearings of this committee, a lot has changed. That was Ms. George's point of view at the time while she was still in her position back in 2003. Of course, this situation is very complex, and we've been holding hearings on the subject for about a month and a half now. At a certain point, we heard testimony, or there was a document which referred to the N2020 fund. What is the connection between that particular fund and everything we heard today? At what point was that fund used? Perhaps for dishonest purposes. I think it was in 2002. It's in 2002 that they started using money from the N2020 fund. And in fact, that was just an account number code for the pension fund. Usually the code normally would have been used for administration purposes to pay Morneau Sobeco or Great West Life. No, it was only to pay for the administration of the pension fund. But then it was decided the administration fees doubled from $400,000 to $800,000 a year, and the number of people involved, 40% of members were still insured, so the money was taken from the pension fund to pay for that. So that fund was used as a front because money was taken to pay persons close to the operation whose names have been quoted. When Morneau Sobeco began charging $800,000 a year, which was double the amount Great West Life had charged in the past to administer the RCMP and insurance pension funds. No, it was only for the insurance fund. So the 40% of the administration costs were taken out of the pension fund. In your opinion, is there still money missing in the pension fund today? Because large amounts were withdrawn from the fund to pay for the administration of another regime. And RCMP members, are they penalized today? Are they do they still have the short end of the stick today, and will they continue to do so in the future? Well, Mr. Gauvin and other auditors said that the money was returned. I don't know. They told us that all the monies were repaid, but I imagine that major amounts like the $450,000 were repaid. If the money was repaid, where did it come from? Well, that is the question. The money was repaid, but out of members' pockets. And this is a huge deal for us. In 1953, administration fees were paid for Treasury Board, but in 1995, that system changed. The entire system changed, and the money was taken out of members' plans. From that time, unfortunately, in 1995, it was $157,000 per year. Then that went up to $800,000 a year. If the money was paid, that money has never been repaid. We are still paying for that out of our pockets. Well, if Mr. Gauvin said that the money was repaid, that was only the money taken out of the pension fund. Well, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you said, Chief Superintendent, that the money, the way this illegal or immoral or unapproved system is still going on today. Is that a correct statement?
Correct.
So that the corrections have not been made, even though on deck number G, if I can get it here, there was a meeting at Commissioner Gork was totally surprised at what's going on and said things will get fixed. you're saying things are not fixed.
And I think that's the reason these two gentlemen are here today. They can tell you where we're at as an organization to addressing that.
Quick question, Commissioner Moll, or Assistant Commissioner Moll. Has it been fixed, or is it still being fixed, or will be fixed?
It's in the process of being fixed. We're working closely with Treasury Board in regards to the authority for the plan.
When did you start trying to fix it?
In 2005, I believe.
Oh, this is 2007.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. If I may.
Briefly.
Okay. In 2005, the issue on the ownership of the plan, who had the delegated authority, that became a significant problem for the organization. And at that point, discussions with Treasury Board started in regards to who would have the delegated authority and who would have the authority to actually spend.
So what's your target date for having it fixed?
Pardon?
What's your target date for having it all fixed and all the money paid back and everything back the way it should be?
Well, we hope to go to the Treasury Board ministers as early as September with a submission with a number of options, including the delegation of authority for the plan to the RCMP, and the administration costs to be identified, and an option to recover the funding, approval for the funding.
On deck number B, you talk about an agreement of principle by the Insurance Committee, and also the Insurance Committee agreed that the funds could be used for the good of the plans. Perhaps if you don't have the names of who was on the Insurance Committee at the time, you can table that. Is that possible?
That'll be part of the document once it's translated. We have the minutes of those meetings, and you will be able to see exactly who was at each decision.
On deck number B, you also say an MOU from the Director of NCPC to GWL, who approved that MOU? Was that Croupe?
No, that'd be Inspector Seguin.
Okay.
Mike Seguin.
And I'm not passing any judgment. I'm just trying to get some extra information on the record here, Mr. Chairman. And you may recall that I had asked the Commissioner, Ms. Bev Busson, to confirm to this committee whether or not our people had been people on Great West Life payroll were working out the RCMP. Have we had that confirmation yet? No. We're still waiting for that. So it seems that that may be the case. I would hope that a confirmation is forthcoming soon.
A comment coming from Mr. Mall here.
Okay, Mr. Mall.
If I may, certainly during the 1990s, during program review, as I understand it, the intention was that the administration costs for a portion of the policy center in compensation policy center in headquarters would be paid for from the funds, and the eventual expectation would be that that administration responsibility would transfer over to employees from Great West Life. And in fact, in 1997, I believe one employee from Great West Life arrived to begin working in the policy center, paid for by Great West Life and charged to the plan and identified to the insurance committee as a cost against the plan.
Well, it certainly seems to be perhaps not as above board as it should be. I'm looking at deck number D. Insurance Committee believed they had the authority to approve the administration outsourcing of $400,000. Why would the insurance company believe either they would know or they don't know? On what basis did they come to the wrong conclusion? Any comment there, Sergeant Frizzell?
The Insurance Committee, it meets once a year. It's folks that know nothing about insurance. They're pulled together into a room. The experts come in from NCPC, say, this is the state of the nation. We need you to vote. And off they go. We have different statements on record where they say, we took the lead from NCPC. We had no clue what we were doing.
Okay. On deck number E, to offset this extra cost, the decision was made to take 40% of the insurance admin fund from the pension fund. A decision was made by whom?
I believe that decision would have been made by Mr. Croupe. He didn't come up with the idea, but he made it happen.
Okay. I'm quite surprised and taken aback by your statement that the money was taken from a fund based on their ability to pay rather than for a service provided. You're confirming that that is the situation. It was taken from a fund regarding their capacity to pay?
That, again, was changed by Mr. Croupe in 2003 when the outsourcing kicked in and that large amount of money was being drawn out, the basic life insurance, which is the biggest, was cut down to 20%, and the disability insurance, of which none was being administered by Mono Sebeco, was paying 40% of the bill.
Okay, John?
I wish I could continue, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we better move on. Bells are going to be ringing here soon. Mr. Christopherson, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to come back to this business of Mono Sebeco. And this, I'm having a lot of trouble understanding why NCPC would put themselves through such a ringer. Questionable legal activities. I mean, it's one thing to want to go with something that's convenient. We all want to have our jobs every day as convenient as possible, and if going here is easier than going there, well, what does it take to get us there? That's, I think everybody sort of lives by that. But once that starts to becoming problematic, there's trade-offs. We're talking about the RCMP. You start getting into legal matters. It's becoming a huge issue. It's ultimately led to all this. I'm having trouble understanding why that wouldn't be looked into more. I mean, that is at the heart of this. Had there not been an effort by NCPC to insist that it be Mono Sebeco exclusively, and without having to go to a public tender, we wouldn't be here. So I'm still not satisfied. I'm hearing adequate motivation. Why? Why were they willing to go so far, so persistently, just to make life easier? It doesn't sound like it. The savings of going with this process, as opposed to the grief it was causing them to do it, to me, makes it a negative trade-off. So help me understand. And also, we're on limited time. Feel free to slip into, and I want to hear a little more about how the specificity of the mandate that you weren't to look into this. I'd just like to hear a little more on that, too.
Okay. First off, I don't understand either. There's a number of theories. You're an inch into the room, then you're 2 inches, and by the time you stop and look back, you're halfway across the room. There was a pretty good deal they had going. Great West Life was going to be administrator. Nobody was going to ask any questions. Mr. Krupe had already committed to that insurance outsourcing happening. He was going to bring in both insurance and pension outsourcing. And when some hiccups came in along the way, they found ways around it. How this happened in our organization is beyond me, and I asked that question very many times. And I have a very hard time believing that Mr. Krupe would have been so bold as to do all that on his own. And what was the other?
The specificity of the mandate. You said that you were specifically mandated not to look into that very question.
The original mandate of the investigation was to follow the pension money. Where did it go? Was it spent in a criminal manner? So 20 million plus went to the outsourcing of the pension. We had a lot of questions around that. As we had questions and we found more and more, our mandate was constricted. At one point I had an argument with Mr. Gork, who told me that our mandate was to investigate Mr. Krupe and Mr. Ivanovich, and I explained to him, no, we don't investigate people, we investigate events. The event was the misuse of the pension funds.
Are you satisfied that there's no question or no need to investigate whether or not there was any questionable activities, and I'm talking dollars now? Are you satisfied that that is not here?
Not at all, but I'm...
I know you're not making that accusation, but you can't remove that either at this stage.
No, the horse is out of the barn. I mean, to go
the cost went up, too. I mean, it was like double the cost. So we are talking some extra money here. It does beg the question, at least the question, was somebody benefiting aside from making ease of work life as a result of getting this deal?
We never executed
you can't tell
any
me
warrants
that that's
on
not
bank accounts or anything like that to be able to tell you that.
In your mind, in both your minds, is this an unresolved area that still could use some further light being shed?
At the time, I wanted to investigate that.
I'm asking.
Absolutely.
Does it remain a concern, though, to get this whole picture?
Yes.
Yes.
One of our issues is that somebody review the criminal investigation to determine whether it should be reopened.
Right.
That's
okay.
one of the things we'd like to see done.
The minutes being doctored, that still hasn't been looked at, has it? Who would have done that?
If the complaint was made to Ms. George, then she is bound by the RCMP Act to ensure that it's investigated.
Okay. And we're still waiting for a conclusion on that one, Chair, I think I heard earlier. On those minutes? Is there any, Alex, is there anything outstanding on that somebody's doing for us?
No, I don't think we have, David.
No? And so what did you say? I'm sorry, the commissioner, the deputy commissioner has committed to what on that?
My understanding was she committed to giving you a follow-up as to where that is at presently.
Okay. We'll follow up to see if there's a follow-up. Life is strange. And I had one more. Oh, yeah. Assistant Commissioner Gork. Just again, you went to him the first time, staff, and he was outraged that all the sort of things you'd expect. And then, if I heard you correctly, you said there seemed to be an attitude change at a follow-up meeting. Is that correct?
A drastic attitude change. And the other point was, in a normal police investigation, when you find out money's being taken from people, you let the victims know. Whether they're victims of a crime or not is irrelevant. Money was being taken from them. I wanted to let the victims know. I was ordered by Mr. Gork not to. We had quite a battle over that. And so not only did his perspective change, but he was adamant that I not take any steps to make sure that the victims were aware of what was happening.
There hasn't been a meeting yet. We haven't had more questions coming out of the meeting than we had going in. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we're going to go 3 minutes, Mr. Rusniski, 3 minutes, Mr. Polev, and then we'll adjourn. Mr. Rusniski, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. We've just heard once again similar statements to what you did that you made during your opening remarks, that Mr. Assistant Commissioner Dave Gork told you not to look, and then you also said that he provided direction of how the investigation should go. You're absolutely clear on that.
Yes.
Assistant Commissioner Gork, when he testified before us here, made it absolutely clear to us that he was strictly there to provide resources and facilitate that this was an Ottawa police investigation. You're telling us he was actually providing direction where to go and not to go, yet he testified before us here that this was an Ottawa police investigation. He had no direct involvement in how the investigation was proceeding. How do we match that?
I believe Mr. Gork went so far as to say he didn't even know who we were investigating. That's...
We've also heard conflicting testimony about the Ottawa police investigation, whether it was shut down or whether it exhausted itself. I know it was an exhausting investigation. It took something like 15 months. But you have just indicated to us that no forensics were done. Was the money ever followed? Did anyone in the contracting or any of this, was the money followed? Was there any forensics done of bank accounts? Was there any follow-up done of that sort whatsoever?
We had a forensic accountant examine the contracts themselves, but no, there was no follow-up as to where the money went, why, that sort of thing. No search warrants were executed.
Okay. Chair, I'll be tabling a document which is translated into French, and it'll be relevant in future committee meetings, and these are the notes of Mr. Ron Lewis from his meeting with the former commissioner, and the commissioner's request for a criminal investigation to be begun. And hopefully we'll have time for a quick point of order at the end as well. But I wanted to give a chance to Mr. Polev.
Yes, I'll be giving notice as well of intention to put forward a motion to call representatives from Monroe Sabico and Great West Life later on. But in these last few minutes, it sounds like the problems with financing the administration of the pension fund originated when Program Review took away resources from your organization to finance its own pension. Is that not pension administration? Is that not so, Mr. Mc?
I'll defer to Mr. Mole, but my understanding, just to clarify that from our perspective, is it was at that time that the decision was made by the RCMP to start deferring the administration costs by taking them out of the insurance fund.
And that was prohibited, right?
There was no that, and again, this is where you will start to see a little bit of a difference in our opinions. The Treasury Board at that time was fully funding the administration.
Yes, I know, but that changed.
That's in changing of our employee-employer relationships. It was just done on the spirit of that MOU. No authority.
Okay, so but the Treasury Board stopped funding the pension administration in 95, is that correct?
They didn't stop funding it. Nothing changed. They didn't even know that this had changed.
So the funds were still coming from Treasury Board? Well, that's very strange. Then where did those funds go?
Mr. Chair, if I could just add some clarity. We're talking about the insurance funds, not the pension plan. And in 1995, the RCMP, like most federal government departments, was faced with program review targets in regards to reference level changes, significant reference level changes, and was looking at alternative service delivery for a number of its services. We had employees...
Yeah, I don't need the whole history. We only got a few minutes here.
That's basically the context that the discussion took place at the insurance...
So the funding for administration was removed at that time?
No, the funding for the administration was shared at that time with the plan and the RCMP's operating budget. And,
all right, and so when the decision was made to employ Morno Sebeco, why would it have been so difficult to just go through a proper tendering competition? They were the best. What would have been so difficult about that?
I can't speak to that issue. I wasn't involved in the process at that time.
Okay, well, so obviously there was some motivation not to.
The only thing is commitments.
I asked Mr. Krupe that very question, and he told me it would take too long.
That's it. Okay.
Point of order.
Point of order. Brief point of order.
Yes,
Mr.
at the beginning of the meeting, you had requested a vote to accept minutes from a steering committee meeting. That's not previously happened. I just assumed that these were straightforward. I did not have a copy of the minutes at that time. And there is a witness list for the ATIP, and it doesn't match a witness list of names that I had requested. Without getting into a list of people and what list had been previously suggested into a debate around this issue, perhaps we can address that in a congenial, collegial manner at the steering committee. I agree. I just wanted to point that out, that the names are not matching.
We thought we did, but we'll deal with that at the steering committee. Why don't we deal with it tomorrow?
Mr. Chair, do we, on that same issue, there is an item on the back of this that I thought we should have had some discussion on. But we would need to be in camera and looking at what the time is. We're very restricted. Could we discuss the item that's on the back of that in camera at the beginning of our next meeting?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Okay then. Meeting adjourned.